Hi, I'm Paul Scheider from Hedgehog Leatherworks. Right now I'm joining you for another video on wilderness survival skills. Today specifically we're going to look at the topic of using the throwing stick. Now the throwing stick is one of the most basic, easy to construct, and easy to use primitive hunting weapons that you can have in a wilderness survival situation. So we're going to examine how to make it and how to use it today. Now if you're already experienced with this method, stick around because I have a couple subtleties of using it that you may not have seen before. So with that being said, let's get started. Now as I mentioned a moment ago, the throwing stick is very easy to construct. All you're looking for is a good hardwood branch, and it's going to be tailored specifically to your body size. So you're going to want to start out by finding a good hardwood that's about wrist thick, and then we're going to size it down so that the length of it is going to be roughly from the distance from your armpit to your wrist. That's going to give you a good stout branch that's going to be good for throwing at small game, and it's going to be used in a lot of other things in wilderness survival too. Now let's talk for a second about material selection. What I've got here is a hardwood fallen sapling, and the reason I prefer a dead tree like this one is twofold. Number one, obviously I don't want to take down a green tree unless I absolutely have to. But more importantly, for a survival situation, you always want to maximize your efficiency in every way possible. This dead tree here is going to be so much easier for me to snap in half. I'm not going to have to get out my knife or a saw or a hatchet or anything like that in order to size this down. Now that's important because I'm not going to waste precious energy and precious calories that I may have to later replenish and may not even be able to replenish later, when I could have used that energy on something much more important. So with that being said, I'm going to take this tree over into our next shot, and I'm going to show you how to snap it in exactly the spots that you want using very simple mechanical advantage. Okay, for this next shot I may be moving in and out of the camera frame a little bit, but the important thing for you to keep an eye on is these two trees behind me. Now this is actually one tree that's got a crotch in it, and it's grown out into two separate sections. Any two stout trees growing closely together will work for this technique. All I've got to do is take this large sapling, which is going to become our throwing stick, and I'm going to set it in this crotch, and then I'm going to lever it on one side such that there's a tremendous amount of pressure exerted wherever I position the breaking point. So you're going to get an idea as to how this works. The first thing I've got to do is size it down a little bit just because the sapling is so large. So as I mentioned, all I've got to do is fit it into the crotch, and then I'm going to walk in one direction and just lever it until it breaks. And it broke exactly where I wanted it to. So now I have isolated the section that is perfect for the throwing stick, nice wrist thick, and I'm going to size this up. I'm going to go back and break it down just a little bit more. Check it out. So pick the spot where you want it to break, fit it in so it's directly resting on one of the logs, then get on the other side. The further out you get, the more leverage it creates. Pull, and it breaks. Now I'm just going to size it down to be perfect for me, which again, as I mentioned before, is going to be the distance from your armpit to your wrist. I'm going to mark that mentally. Go back to my tree here. Fit that breaking point exactly where I want it, and just pull. The result that I now have is a perfect throwing stick, which matches me almost perfectly, and it's the perfect size, nice and stout, and we have made this entire thing using the most efficient means possible. I didn't have to get out an axe and exert myself tremendously, or a saw or a knife or anything like that to create this simple, effective weapon. Alright, now I'm going to show you how to use it. So first and foremost, the throwing stick is intended as a weapon for small game. You know, something like a rabbit, a squirrel, maybe a bird that lands nearby on a tree, a chipmunk, a duck out on a pond, something like that. And there is a lot of talk in the survival community amongst the experts that say that food is in fact the very last priority you need in a survival situation, because you can go so long before it kills you. You can go up to 3 weeks, they say, roughly, give or take. And I'm totally an advocate for that philosophy. I believe in it. But I also think that when you're dropped out there and it's time to survive, one of the very first things you should do is get a throwing stick. And there's really two reasons. One, for hunting. You can also use this for a baton for a lot of techniques that work in conjunction with a knife. And I'll show you those in some later videos. But really, you saw that this didn't take but a minute to make this thing. I expended almost no energy making it, and what I have now is a weapon that I can carry with me, and if a target of opportunity comes along, I now have a means available for collecting that food. So while I am gathering shelter materials, for example, tending to something higher priority like a shelter, and along comes a squirrel on a nearby tree, I now am able to take advantage and probably put some more calories into my body that I would not be able to otherwise. Now, the throwing stick can be a little bit cumbersome if you're carrying it around in your hands all the time, because you're going to need your hands to do all kinds of things, whether you're making a bow drill set or collecting shelter materials. So what I like to do with these is tuck them across my belt, and I promise I'm not going to drop my drawers in front of you and surprise you like that. But just tuck it in diagonally across your lower back by feeding it through your belt. Now it's out of the way. I got my hands free. I can forget that this even exists and that it's there. But like I say, if that target of opportunity comes along, I have a means of collecting that food readily available and quickly accessible.